Phase 1. The entry. You're 26 years old the first time someone hands you an envelope that isn't a paycheck. It's thin, lighter than you expect. Inside is a photograph, a time window, and a number with 6 digits followed by 2 zeros. No name, no signature, no handshake. The man who gave it to you left the room before you finished opening it. The door didn't even click shut behind him. It just drifted, silently, the way things do when no one wants to leave a sound behind. You sit in a rented room in a city you've been in for 11 days. The walls are off-white. Not white, off-white. The kind of color that suggests someone tried and then stopped. The heater makes a low, mechanical hum. Not rhythmic, not random, something in between. It has been making that sound since the first morning, and you've stopped hearing it the way you stop hearing your own heartbeat. You don't have a title, you don't have a contract with your name on it, you don't have business cards or an office or a chain of command that anyone has ever written down on paper. What you have is a photograph, a window of 4 hours, and a number. You were recruited, though that word is too warm, too collegiate. You were identified, which is the more accurate thing, by a man named Dario, who you met through a network of people connected to a period of your life that required a certain set of skills and a certain tolerance for silence. Military, then private, then quieter than private. Each move felt like a choice. In retrospect, each move was a corridor. You were always walking towards something. You just couldn't see the end of the hall. Your hands are steady. That is not a boast. It is a clinical observation, the same way a surgeon might note his resting pulse. Steady hands are not courage. Steady hands are just biology, or training, or both braided together until you can't find the seam. You study the photograph for 40 minutes. You memorize the face the way you memorize a map, not because you find it interesting, but because the terrain matters. Everything else you feel or don't feel, you will deal with later. Later is a place you've been putting things for years. The first job takes 6 days of preparation and 11 seconds of action. You're paid in full, wired to an account in a jurisdiction that asks very few questions. The number in your account goes up. You eat a meal at a restaurant near the waterfront. You order something you don't particularly want. You sit by the window and watch the street. People walk past with groceries. A child drops a coin and doesn't chase it. A couple argues in the doorway of a pharmacy. The world continues at exactly its original pace. You finish your meal, you leave a tip. You go back to the off-white room with the humming heater. You lie on your back and stare at the ceiling and wait for something to arrive. Guilt, or grief, or revelation, something to mark the moment as significant. Nothing comes. That, you will come to understand, is the first and most important thing the work takes from you. Not your conscience, not your sleep. Those come later. The first thing it takes is the expectation that you will feel something proportional to what you've done. You sleep 6 hours, dreamless. The heater hums. Phase 2. The ascent. Over the next 3 years, you complete 14 contracts. Not quickly, not in bursts. 1, then a gap of 6 weeks, then another, then 2 in a season. The pace is determined by people above you whose structure you understand only in the way you understand a building's architecture by walking through rooms. You know where you are, but you've never seen the blueprint. Each job comes with slightly more information than the last. This is not generosity, this is calibration. They are learning how much you need to perform at the level they require. You are learning what questions not to ask. By the 3rd year, you are no longer the person who receives envelopes. You are the person who receives briefings. The distinction matters the way all distinctions in hierarchies matter. Not in salary, necessarily, but in access. Access to context. Context changes the texture of the work without changing its nature. You are introduced in a room in Vienna in February, 16 degrees below zero outside, the windows triple glazed, the air inside stale and conditioned, to a man who uses the word portfolio to describe your history. You are, in his language, an asset with a strong portfolio. He is perhaps 55.
He wears a watch you recognize as expensive without knowing the brand. He doesn't look at you the way a person looks at a person. He looks at you the way a person looks at a tool they're deciding whether to replace or maintain. You are maintained. Your rate goes up, not dramatically, incrementally, the way a cost of living adjustment goes up. Enough to acknowledge inflation, not enough to call it reward. You are given a contact, one contact, a number stored in a phone that is replaced every 45 days. That contact handles logistics, timing, and occasionally cleanup. You never meet them in person. You communicate in brief, factual sentences. You could be exchanging information about a shipment of industrial equipment and the language would be identical. Promotions in this work do not look like promotions. There is no ceremony, there is no announcement. There is only an increase in the complexity of what you're asked to do and a corresponding increase in what you are paid to do it, and a silence where acknowledgement would be if any of this were normal. By year 5, you are operating in 4 countries. You speak passable German and functional Mandarin and excellent French. You have 3 passports. None of them have your original name. You cannot remember the last time someone called you by your original name. You think about this occasionally, not with sadness, just as an observation, the way you'd observe a change in weather.
Phase 3. The system. There are rules. They were never written down for you. You assembled them over time, the way you might assemble a picture from fragments, each piece arriving separately from a different direction until the image resolves. The first rule is that you are never the last person to know. You are simply not the first. Information moves above you and reaches you exactly when they want it to reach you, not a moment sooner. If you receive a briefing 48 hours before a window, this is not because 48 hours is the standard. This is because 48 hours is what they've determined you need based on your history, based on their model of you. You are a variable in someone else's equation. The second rule is that every job has a reason you're not told and a reason you are told, and these are almost never the same reason. The third rule is that questions travel upward and answers don't always come back. You have, over 7 years, developed your own system inside their system, a set of routines that exist purely for functional stability. You wake at the same time regardless of time zone. You set your body to a fixed internal clock and it holds within 20 minutes either direction. You eat 2 large meals and nothing else. You run between 4 and 6 kilometers every morning, every city, every season. You don't drink in the 48 hours before a window. You sleep exactly 7 hours, pharmaceutical if necessary. You keep a notebook, not with anything in it that would mean something to anyone else. Marks, symbols that encode your own private version of a calendar, things that happened, things that are coming. A language only you can read. This is not psychology. This is engineering. You are maintaining a machine. The machine is you. By year 7, you have earned in total a number that would allow you to stop. You know this. You do not stop. Not because of addiction or ideology or anything so textured. You don't stop because stopping requires a destination, and the life you were living before this no longer exists in any form you could return to. Phase 4. The erosion. Your sister calls you on a Tuesday. You are in a hotel in Lisbon. She wants to know if you're coming for the holidays. You tell her you're working. She asks what kind of work keeps you away every year, and you say consulting, and she says you always say consulting, and you say yes. There's a pause, not an angry pause, a tired one, the kind that happens when a person has been having the same conversation for long enough that they've stopped expecting it to resolve differently. You talk for 6 minutes, you hang up, you sit in the chair by the window and watch the street for a while. It's raining, the kind of rain that doesn't commit to anything, barely mist, just enough to make the cobblestones shine. You had a relationship once, in the early years, a person who knew only what you told them, which was not very much. It ended without a scene. That was the worst part. No scene.
just a gradual mutual recognition that you were not present in the way that a person needs another person to be present. You were a body in a room, a voice on the phone, a name that arrived and departed on unpredictable schedules. She didn't ask you to change, she just eventually stopped waiting. You respected that. You understood it perfectly, which is its own kind of grief, understanding a loss too clearly to argue against it. Now the isolation is not something you suffer, it is something you maintain. Isolation is operationally practical. Isolated people are harder to leverage. No one can threaten what you don't have. This is true. This is also the most elaborate thing you have ever told yourself. You are, by year 9, a person who has optimized away everything that would make you difficult to lose.
Phase 5. The shattering. It doesn't happen the way you would have predicted. There's no single job that breaks something in you, no face that stays, no moment of cinematic clarity in a rain-soaked alley. It's smaller than that. It's so small you almost miss it. You are in a city, it doesn't matter which, and you are walking, and a child, perhaps 4 years old, falls on the sidewalk in front of you, trips on a cracked piece of pavement, lands on both palms, looks up at you with that brief moment of suspension before the crying starts, the moment where the child is deciding, purely physiologically, how bad it is. You bend down, you help them up, you say something, you don't remember what. The child's parent arrives in seconds, apologetic, flustered, lifting the child, murmuring. They look at you with gratitude. You nod, you walk on. And something, somewhere in the machinery of you, makes a sound it has never made before. Not loud, a single note, like a wire pulled too tight, finally giving a fraction of an inch. You walk back to your hotel. You sit on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in what you realize is 11 years, you try to locate who you were before the first envelope in the off-white room. You try to find that person. You can describe him, you know the facts, but you cannot locate the experience of being him. It's like trying to remember being cold when you're standing in the sun. The information is there, the sensation is not. You sit there for a long time. The heater in this room also hums. Of course it does. Phase 6. The cycle. You exit the way all things in systems exit, through a process, not a decision. You are 41 years old. You send a message through the channel to your contact, 2 sentences. They respond within 6 hours. There is a protocol for this, of course there is. There is a protocol for everything. A period of availability for transition, a final financial arrangement, a set of instructions about certain materials and communications, everything wound down with the bureaucratic efficiency of a lease termination. No one thanks you, no one marks it. There is no handshake in a Vienna room with a man who wears an expensive watch. It happens in messages, in numbers, in the quiet closure of accounts. You go to a country where the cost of living is low and the questions are even lower. You rent a small house. It has a garden that someone else stopped maintaining. You begin, slowly, to maintain it. You learn the difference between the plants that are supposed to be there and the ones that arrived on their own and made themselves permanent. You watch the news sometimes. You read certain reports. You recognize occasionally a particular pattern, a particular kind of event described in a particular kind of language, a gap where a person used to be. You recognize the work, not your work, the work. It continues. Somewhere there is a rented room with off-white walls and a humming heater. Somewhere a thin envelope is being opened, a photograph is being studied, a window of 4 hours is being calculated. The system does not mourn its components, it simply fills the space. That is not a tragedy. That is just how systems work. You go back to the garden. The afternoon is quiet. The work continues. And so does everything else.